Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm saying good morning my time, realise it might not be morning with you, but hello and welcome to this, the second live stream event of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. I'm start with some introductions. My name is Graham McPhee. I expect most of you will know that because if you're with us in week 4 of the programme, then you'll have been seeing little bits and pieces from myself up until now. So my name is Graham McPhee, as I say. I'm the lead educator on this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. I work at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow in Scotland. Like everyone else, like the vast majority of people, I find myself working in very different situation just now. So probably best to acknowledge that, like many of us, I'm working from home. I would normally be doing this in the studio at the university. I'm at home, so hence the kind of slightly different background. If you were with us 2 weeks ago, you'll see I've got a wall behind me and a curtain there. I've managed to shift things around so that I've not got the light from the window shining in and perhaps messing up the screen a little bit. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for this live stream event. Thank you very much for joining and being part of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. And it really is kind of heartening and kind of quite important to just kind of acknowledge the numbers and the levels of participation. And this course has been huge. We've now had over 10,500 people join this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you to each and every one of you for doing that. And we truly have an international community of learning, 133 different countries represented amongst those 10,500 participants, which is just absolutely incredible, kind of thinking about it. Vast majority of people from the UK, about kind of 4 out of every 5 are from the UK. We've got sizable proportions from Australia, Nigeria, Ireland, South Africa, Canada, India, the United States, Ethiopia. And then we've got a whole range of other countries represented, Burundi, Russia, Syria, Yemen, Fiji. So just it is absolutely fantastic to have so many people and from such a wide variety of countries and settings. So thank you very much for doing that. Not only have we got big numbers and not only have we got an international cohort, what is possibly for me even more pleasing is that you're a very engaged and sociable bunch. More than 50% of you are what we would class as active learners on the site, posting comments, talking to each other, having conversations, reacting to the material, reacting to other posts and keeping those conversations going. And that's a fantastically high number. Also, you're doing this course via the Future Learn site, and Future Learn have any amount of short courses like this. The average on most Future Learn courses generally sits about 30% of participants engaging as social learners. So for us to be up over 50% is absolutely fantastic. So I think it says something about the group of people that we've got with us on this run of the course, but it possibly says something about our subject matter as well, and various things that are going on just now and how relevant and important this subject feels for us. So just kind of thank you for being part of the cohort. Thank you for taking part in this, and thank you for being active participants. And I'd really encourage you for the final 2 weeks of the course to keep that level of social engagement going up. I also want to acknowledge as well, just kind of as we start out here, saying I kind of hope everybody is doing the best that they can. I think in the kind of current situation that we face around the world just now, that for each of us to be looking out for ourselves, our family, and our friends, and we're trying to take good care of ourselves and those round about us. So I hope everybody is in as good a situation as you can be, and just encourage everybody to look out both for yourself and those round about you. So if you joined us 2 weeks ago for the first live stream event, you'll get a sense of kind of what the kind of format that this follows. Thank you very much to everybody that's posted questions in advance of this session. What I've did is I've pulled out some of those questions, and I'm going to try and respond to them. But I think you'll appreciate with over 10,500 participants and so many questions and comments and such like, it is impossible for me in this session to respond to all the questions. So I've pulled out a number of questions which I think reflect some of the key themes that we have been thinking about over the last 2 weeks, and also some of the key themes and kind of threads of discussion that I see kind of cropping up within your comments as well. So please don't be offended if I've not actually picked your particular question. And I'm kind of trying to get a broad overview of kind of some of the themes that are coming up from your comments. But just as a kind of quick recap of what we thought about in the last 2 weeks of the programme. In week 3 of the material, we thought about communication and particularly thinking about Billy's story in week 3 was largely about Billy when he was a bit younger, some of his early childhood experiences, and about how they might have shaped his development and a kind of sense of his environment kind of growing up and thinking about that, how that kind of might shape how he is just now. So communication within that, and then I guess very interestingly within the current context, touch and the role of touch in childcare, the role of touch and linked into communication, and the role that touch kind of plays in life, and that sadly feels ever more relevant just now with the current situation that we're in terms of kind of isolation, and then then social distancing, and then even when we are interacting with people, about very much being encouraged to kind of keep a distance, and so touch is in the current circumstances taking on actually kind of quite a different meaning as well. So we had that material in week 3, and then in week 4 we had even more material. We thought about different traditions and ideologies of childcare practice. In particular, we thought about child and youth care. The child and youth care tradition is kind of from North America. Social pedagogy, which would normally be associated with kind of mainland Europe. We thought about youth work. We thought about residential childcare, and we also thought about social work. We spent some time thinking about love, and we had an input from Jenny Malloy, which as always was really well received and prompts lots of responses, and that comes up in some of the questions that I've pulled out. And then we thought about issues of risk aversion, and links into resilience in terms of how we think about encouraging children to grow and develop and become resilient young people in the first instance, and then become resilient adults. And then in week 4, Billy's story had the title of community support, and you get introduced to some material about some support from a youth advocacy group based in the community that tried to put in material for Billy. So we've covered quite a lot in the last 2 weeks. As I say, I've pulled out some questions that people had posted, so thanks in advance for this. And again, I say, hopefully these questions are kind of quite reflective of some of the themes that have been coming up. Given that I'm sitting talking like this on my own for the whole time, I'll just pause periodically to take a quick glass of water just to make sure that I don't dry up. Okay, so the first comment I'd like to start with is from Lucy McBrearty. So Lucy, thank you for posting your comment. And Lucy picked up on the idea of risk aversion, and you heard Ian Milligan speaking about that in the week 4 material. She says, I know from personal experience that cuts to government funding and an increase in procedural technicalities can disempower staff working with vulnerable young people and can put them at a disadvantage. Should this be reviewed in all care establishments? So I guess I've got the privilege of kind of giving my view on this, and again, it's worth acknowledging that a lot of the subjects that we talk about in this course, and a lot of the subjects that I'll be talking about today, are not necessarily exact science. There are a range of different views and perspectives in relation to these subjects. But in terms of what I'm about to say on this subject of risk aversion, then I think there is increasingly strong evidence to back up the fact that we do need to challenge and we do need to change some of the norms that have developed over a period of time. Now, the material that we presented to you in week 4, and especially thinking about kind of some of the discussion you heard from Ian Milligan, was talking about how in a whole range of childcare settings, so be that from residential care or any sort of care establishment where children were living, to daycare settings, to school settings, it's possible to argue that for a whole variety of reasons, a number of risk-averse policies and norms had developed in a range of settings, and those could play out in a number of ways. Sometimes they might be associated with the activities that young people were allowed to do, and by activities I mean kind of some of the more kind of social, sport, kind of physical activities, some of those things that they were allowed to do or not do, and perhaps some of the choices and things open to them being curbed due to kind of risk averse thinking. But in other ways it can play out in terms of the relationships that staff and young people were encouraged or allowed to have, and in some instances the way they were allowed to kind of speak to each other, and that feels particularly relevant when we link this into the notion of love. So perhaps it's just worth thinking about kind of how did some of this risk averse thinking come about, and how did it come to predominate in some settings and potentially still do? Well, certainly in the Western world, certainly kind of in large parts of kind of Europe, certainly in the UK and in North America, increased in instances of uncovering of abuse and kind of poor practice. Some of the reactions to that, understandably, were, right, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And some of the responses that have been brought into how we make sure that doesn't happen again would be to almost just shut some things down completely and justify it by saying, this is us helping keep children safe, because if this activity, if children can potentially get hurt or injured. So if actually kind of, I'll cite an actual example. When I first started working in residential childcare in Scotland, how many years are we going back? 1993. So if I go all the way back to 1993, the first establishment that I was working and then did a fair amount of outdoor sporting activities, kind of taking children and young people out, kind of hill walking, canoeing, abseiling, skiing, a kind of whole range of activities, things such as that. And I would suggest that that was all very well and properly managed, properly risk assessed. The staff going along were suitably trained and qualified and such like. And in parallel to that, there was an incident in another part of Scotland where a young person tragically lost their life canoeing. And it was a tragic accident. And without getting into the details of that particular case, there was possibly some things not done which should have been done. But some of the response and learning from that was that the upshot of it was our activities got curtailed and we weren't allowed to do things because the connection seemed to be this now becomes an unsafe activity, and the best way to protect children and young people and to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen again is just for that activity not to happen again. And I would cite that as an example of kind of risk averse thinking and risk averse practice. And the more that became the norm, the harder it became to challenge. And then, so that's thinking about physical activities. But when we actually then start thinking about increased instances of realisation of abuse and potential, and especially sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, then again, some of the responses of the system, if we call it that, is say, well, the best way to keep children safe is to limit and curtail the sort of contact that staff and young people can have, and to curtail the sorts of relationships that they could have. And again, this would all be promoted as this is the best way to keep children safe, because we've had instances where staff members have abused their position, abused the power and trust that they've got, and used that as a way to mistreat and potentially abuse children. And so the limiting of the sorts of practice that could happen, the sorts of relationships that could be developed, became kind of paramount, and it was all justified under the sphere of keeping children safe. And certainly when I started in residential childcare, the notion of, and I see comments coming up already here about hugs and such, like that whole notion of kind of physical contact. And actually, for a large part of my residential childcare career before I moved into the university setting was in primary aged units, actually. So arguably an age of children who even more need that, or or we would like to think that touch and hugs and cuddles and such like would be part of an everyday caring experience. And if we're taking children into settings where the norm or the expectation is that that sort of stuff doesn't happen, then I think it really begs the question about what sort of caring environment is it that we are not allowed to touch children and young people, or offer kind of physical care in the form of hugs, loves, and such like. And it's, again, I see comments coming up here that when we begin to do that so much, is this potentially abusive or limiting in terms of the care that the system is supposedly offering to children and young people? So Lucy, you asked the question, should this be reviewed in all care establishments? Well, we suggest in Scotland that is very much happening now. I'll post the link to this actually at the top of the live stream page after we finish it, in terms of that. I'll post it in the comments and pin it at the top so that you can find it. But if you aren't aware that just a couple of months and just actually before COVID-19 and lockdown started, the culmination of a huge piece, the culmination of this stage of a huge piece of work in Scotland came about. So we've had the independent care review in Scotland. And I mean, actually, I could sit and talk about the independent care review for the next 45 minutes. But one of the main messages coming out of that is that we need to put love and relationships back at the heart of the care system. And young people in the care system deserve to be loved and to be truly cared for, and to be absolutely claimed, and feel that people are, the adults, people are out there making them number one, looking out for them and loving them, caring them. And children and young people in the care system have as much right to that as children within the community. And that sort of thinking really does cause us to have to absolutely challenge and question this notion of kind of risk aversion and boundaries. And sometimes this is actually kind of wrapped up as, it's not professional to have that sort of, it's unprofessional to give a child a hug, or to have any sort of physical contact, or to use the language of love in terms of how we look after them. So the findings of the independent care review in Scotland have really set as a task at a national level in terms of how do we begin to change practice in order that children and young people within the care system and within all establishments where we might look and care for children. And I'm taking that as widest sense, from residential care to respite care to daycare, and I'm also including education establishments within this. And again, we'll go to the point where the comments are coming so fast up the chat bar. I can't respond to everything there, but I've seen a couple of comments there already about schools, and actually kind of schools are, I think, kind of one of the settings that would be most challenged by this risk averse thinking, and the notion of, is it okay to have physical contact with children and different and different norms of practice. And I see that kind of somebody putting a comment in, I would rather be a human than a professional. I think there's many of us, Johanna, kind of share that view kind of very much, and that's why kind of some of this thinking, this risk averseness needs to be challenged. And then actually, when we link that notion of kind of risk averseness to the notion of resilience, and again, we've given you some material to think about about resilience this week, and we know that the important role that children becoming capable, resilient, free thinking kind of young people growing into young adults, and how this can equip them for life moving forward. And actually, if we keep children in risk averse settings and we never let them test themselves out, we never let them take risks, then do we actually potentially limit their growth and development? No, we can wrap that up as we're keeping them safe and we're protecting them. But actually, we've all got to learn how to manage risk, and we've all got to become risk competent. And again, in the material from social pedagogy this week, you will have seen that risk competence is a concept that sits at the centre of social pedagogy. And actually, my experience of over the last 10 years or so, in terms of regularly being involved in training and discussions about social pedagogy, primarily with the residential childcare sector, but with other parts of the care sector as well. This notion of risk competence is one of the parts of social pedagogy that most instinctively makes most sense to a whole load of practitioners, because yeah, that's absolutely what we need to be doing. And sometimes the system, in terms of this risk averseness, and we're talking about keeping children safe, actually we're doing them a disservice, because we are inhibiting their ability to become risk competent. We are inhibiting their ability to weigh things up, to make decisions, to ask for advice, to test things out, and to sometimes to fail, for things to go wrong. That's got to be part of our life. And actually, I see a comment just come up just as I'm saying that, Kate Mala, taking risk is part of our life, so we need to let children and to do that. Now, what I'm not advocating is just a free-for-all and just a kind of, yeah, let them do anything, and absolutely it's got to be risk within appropriate boundaries, and adults have got roles within there. And part of our role is about, if things do go wrong, about helping them to pick up the pieces. Part of our role is about helping them to kind of weigh up kind of different pros and cons, or kind of different scenarios and different choices, because that's absolutely what part of that growth and development. So Lucy, I think that the Independent Care Review has set us the challenge of reviewing this. And I would say not just within care establishments, but actually thinking about how we think about this as a society. And again, it feels really relevant just now because, in the UK and in many other countries around the world, we're in lockdown, but we're not going to stay in lockdown forever. We can't stay in lockdown forever, and we're going to have to come out of that in some sort of kind of managed and measured way. But there's going to be a lot of risk assessment and risk management about what is it safe for individuals and communities and people within that to be doing. So we need to have, I would suggest, quite a nuanced approach to risk in order that we don't completely limit the options of the growth, and particularly the kind of some of the challenges that a lot of the young people that we're thinking about as part of this programme, some of the challenges that they will face. So Lucy, thank you for thanks for your question. I've covered that. In answering that question, I've touched on a number of things. So some of the other questions that I threw out that people had asked, I guess I've already begun to touch on some of those sessions. So it's questions. I'd like to move on to a question posed by Irene Cockram. So Irene, kind of thank you very much for posting your question. And she says, so having seen the shifts in how we support vulnerable children over the last 30 years, do you think the UK will make a move to a more social pedagogy style of care? Do you think the UK will make moves away from being led by risk aversion, or do you think that society has become quite more entrenched? I think that's a really interesting question, Irene. Certainly what I can comment on, I guess I wouldn't like to predict what I think might happen at a more societal level, if you want to kind of say that. But I think certainly from my sense of the care sector within Scotland, there, and especially over the last 10 or 12 years or so, there is increasing engagement with social pedagogy and what it's got to offer, and perhaps offering something different to some of the traditional ways that our care system has thought about caring for and responding to children and young people. I guess one of the interesting questions within that is kind of how much momentum that can or will gather. Is certainly, compared to where it was 10 years ago, there's far more people thinking about it, engaging with it. There's far more organisations thinking and engaging with it. And I'd see some comments appearing here about social pedagogy and different agencies adopting it as a model of practice, as a way of thinking, and trying to embed it across their organisation and within the workforce that they employ. As to where that might go societally, that's a bigger challenge, I think, Irene. But I think certainly within the care sector and the care system itself, then there is growing evidence of engagement and thinking that is more consistent with some of the ideas and theories and approaches that sit within social pedagogy, and a lot of that does place emphasis on relationships, love, risk competence, and the education in its widest sense, as opposed to kind of perhaps some of the more risk-averse practices that have been to the fore in certain parts of the UK system for the last couple of decades. So thank you for that question, Irene. And just following on from that, Tricia Davidson. Tricia, thank you very much for your question. You asked, is there training available for social pedagogy? Then, well, yes, there is. There are a couple of main agencies within the UK. Tempera UK being one of the main providers, a kind of social enterprise company, and Tempera, and I'm slightly biased here, I've did work with them. I think they're a kind of fantastic organisation in terms of the work that they do with care providers, in terms of helping them to understand and learn and think about social pedagogy and how they can embed that practice and develop it within their setting. Again, I'll post. I'm fairly sure, actually, I'll need to double check now, but I'm fairly sure actually Tempera, there's links to some of their material on the course pages already. If there's not, I will post that as part of my comment. So Tricia, that would be a good place to start for if you're wanting to find out more about potential social pedagogy training. Brian Morgan asked the question. So Brian, thanks for your comment. Right, so you asked an interesting question, Brian, two parts. So the first part isn't actually a question, you make a statement, and it's an interesting statement. So you start by saying, considering most of us agree with what is the best way to care for vulnerable children. I just want to pause there. I guess I would probably say I'm not utterly convinced that again, if we take the UK as an example, I'm not convinced at a national level there is a broad consensus about the best way to care for vulnerable children. And probably the sort of example I cite, so I'm just going to pause again to take a quick drink. Probably the best example, or the best examples, where I think that comes into most sharp focus, Brian, is when young people are involved in offending behaviour, so involved in activities that break the law, and there's victims and such like. And I think, sadly, in a lot of instances, we can see reactions that seem completely devoid of any context or understanding of this young person. This is a child, this is a young person. They are making choices in terms of the way they're behaving in these instances, but do these choices exist in complete isolation? Well, absolutely not. And especially thinking about a lot of the young people that the care system might be responding to, have often experienced a whole range of adverse events and circumstances that have affected them, their growth, their development, their outlook in the world. But sometimes when these young people offend, we can see people respond, or sections of society, and certainly within the media at times, responding in a way that is very, I think, kind of justice orientated, very kind of blaming them. They're never going to learn unless they take responsibility for their behaviour, and they've got to be punished and such. And such like. So I think that's but one example of how we can have very different responses to vulnerable children. And even thinking back to the first week of the course, and some of the conversations that I saw popping up within the comments about responses to issues of poverty and education and such like, and that I would say some of I guess there was a range of different views expressed within those comments, maybe the kind of simplest way of kind of mentioning that. So I guess I think we've still got a long way to go where until there's a unanimous approach about how to respond to vulnerable children. you then go and say, how do we get policymakers to sign up to some of these ideas? Now, I think, again, I've got the advantage of being the one in the hot seat here, and the opportunity to offer my opinion. I do think that we as a society and as policymakers and at a government level, we need more buy-in, more resourcing of, and more political will to implement some of the ideas that sit more at the heart of social pedagogy and child and youth care, and we need to challenge and in some way kind of banish some of the kind of risk-averse kind of thinking and practice that we allowed to develop over a period of time, often as a bit of a knee-jerk response to some of the more high-profile instances of abuse and high-profile cases, and that precipitated this swing to, we've got to keep everybody safe, and we begin to shut things down on the back of that. So in terms of kind of moving that forward within a Scottish context, again, what happens next with independent care review? And in many ways, it's interesting, the independent care review in terms of when the report came out, it was early February, if memory serves me right. That already feels like such a long time ago because of kind of what's happened in the world in the last kind of 5 or 6 weeks, and we don't know where things are going to be kind of heading in the short or the long term. But there's going to be a number of challenges for us on a global scale, kind of within different countries, within societies. And I think it's really important. I passionately hope that some of the messages in the Scottish context coming out of the independent care review don't get lost because of that. So I think that's something that we've got to try and hold on to. So Brian, thank you for your comment. Vicky Lowe, Vicky, you asked, is it now time? So Vicky, thanks for your question. Is it now time for a review of children's services we offer using the principles of social pedagogy? Surely the idea of the child as the centre of the relationship can only be beneficial. I couldn't agree more. Okay, and you probably get that sense from kind of some of the things that I've been saying. And I think, yeah, that there has been more engagement with that on an organisation by organisation level. But there's probably quite a strong argument to make that actually the best way for lasting change is for more of a buy-in by policymakers and trying to influence government thinking and kind of see where kind of things roll out from there. So certainly a number of individuals and agencies involved in kind of thinking about social pedagogy. That's I think a notion of, that's part of what the strategy needs to be, that if we're going to move beyond pockets of change and think about more kind of systemic changes, then policymakers, government, funding bodies, they've got to be part of the conversation. So thanks for your question. I want to make a point of talking about the subject of love. Obviously, we had the material this week from Jenny Malloy, and to again kind of say, and it was a few years ago that I recorded that session with Jenny. Now I've had the privilege of hearing Jenny speak in a number of settings and been involved in some pieces of work with her. Hugely powerful, inspirational, and motivating character in terms of both in terms of the role that she now has as an advocate for young people, but in terms of from the conversation that I had the chance to record with her as part of the programme that you've listened to, kind of hearing her talk about and reflect on her experience of the care system growing up and about what was important for her and kind of what helped her to survive and kind of what were the key and important factors within that. And I think it's no surprise that in looking through the questions and the comments this week, the amount of people that started their comment by saying something about how impressed, or how inspirational, or how positive it was to hear Jenny talking and speaking. I mean, and there's probably an interesting point actually as well about hearing somebody speak so positively and passionately about the care system and about care staff and about social workers and such like, because to be frank, we can use phrases like kind of bad news sells newspapers, etc. I think we are far more likely to hear about the negative stories associated with the care system. Certainly in terms of the national media, the instances that make the national media are abuse cases and court cases and convictions and rightly so. I'm not arguing for a second that those stories should not be reported, but certainly that's often the main or the only way in which the care system and the people that populate the care system, be it the young people living within the care system or the range of adults and professionals involved in trying to support those young people. But quite often it's only those negative stories that really make it to the national media and get that degree of publicity. So I think that somebody like Jenny, in terms of the kind of her experience and the story she's got to tell, is really powerful and really important. And again, it was interesting to see the amount of people that made a comment that they were going to buy her book or her books on the back of that, and that's really pleasing as well. Actually, that kind of more people are going to engage with her message, and so we've got a couple of comments and questions that pick up in themes associated with what Jenny was talking about, that notion of putting love into the care system and making sure. And again, remember, in a Scottish context, this is kind of one of the main messages that has come out of the independent care review. And actually, even to digress just for a second, it was interesting the fact that love was one of the work streams within the independent care review. That does demonstrate actually how we are beginning to shift the conversation, because if we'd had an independent care review, I would suggest certainly 10 years ago, I don't think love would have been mentioned as much. I don't think love would have been one of the work streams within it. We've really started to change the conversation in terms of what do young people in the care system need, what do they deserve, what do young people need, what do young people deserve, because actually the young people in the care system are no different in that sense. They shouldn't be denied aspect to what good quality care is. They shouldn't be denied kind of loving, caring relationships. And actually there's an argument for saying the young people within the care system need that even more, because they're in the care system by and large because they've had adverse experiences, they may have experienced abuse, trauma, neglect, attachment issues, separation. That's by and large how children and young people end up in the care system. So they need those loving, caring relationships even more. So the fact that the independent care review in Scotland has kind of tried to recognise this and put this kind of front and centre and said that the care system has got to be appropriately responsive to the needs of kind of young people and have loving, trusting care and relationships at the heart of the system. So the message of Jenny potentially has never been more important. So a couple of people picked up on things to do that. So Annie L. Millington. So Annie L., thank you for your comment. You said you found this week interesting, especially the content and love. The question, how can we incorporate the theories of love into a classroom in a safe and appropriate way? It may be something that we already do, but I'm curious to hear about this being put into a classroom setting. Now, this is really interesting, just seeing some of the comments that have come up in the chat bar, and especially thinking about some of the discussion that we had in the live stream 2 weeks ago, where we spent a bit of time thinking about kind of schools and education settings and how can some of the challenges for school in terms of the demands about kind of educational attainment and curriculum and kind of working through curriculums and working to exams and outcomes and testing and such like. And then how and not for a second necessarily saying that also the role of school, a big part of the role of schools, or the central role of schools is to educate. But if we want schools to be something more than just factories that just kind of input children, input knowledge and bang them out the other end, about this being a environments that promote growth and development and enrich kind of young people, then then this question of how schools can be more, and we spent a bit of time 2 weeks ago kind of thinking about kind of schools being kind of more nurturing and responsive, and some of this connects into the theme of touch in terms of kind of what are the boundaries that are allowed in terms of are encouraged in terms of relationships. And I think it's a real challenge for schools to think about, like, even just sometimes actually the use of the word love, that for many years, certainly in a kind of care or education setting, the use of the word love would be seen as kind of quite taboo, and may have actually in some instances kind of caused eyebrows to be raised and questions to be asked about what somebody's motivation for thinking and talking in that way. So that linking this to the recommendations of the Independent Care Review about we need to put love at the heart of the care system. Well, young people in care are part of the education system also. So I think that there are some real challenges and questions for us about how does the entire care system in its totality, not just thinking about where young people might live, but all the different professionals and adults who are likely to come into contact with them, to ensure that young people feel truly claimed and understood, and know that somebody's there for them, got their back for them, and care for them in a way that goes beyond just somebody just doing a job. And it's in that I see a comment, and I'm kind of trying to keep like the comment comes up here, and Alison Hemmings, thank you for your comment. I couldn't agree more. You say, kind of schools are doing it. You're saying some schools can manage this. It depends on the culture of the school. I think that there's a huge part here. I mean, all organisations in many ways are dependent on kind of leaders and leadership groups in terms of the culture that they set and kind of how they encourage staff teams to work, and the norms and kind of practice cultures and something like that. And I think there's something about in a care setting and education system, and perhaps linking back to social pedagogy, and I mentioned Tempra as an organisation that deliver social pedagogy training. Tempra will often say it's far more effective rather for organisations just to send the odd individual. If we're going to work with organisations, we want to try and work with the whole organisation and try and embed cultural and practice change at an organisational level, because otherwise you send one or two people on the course, they get really infused, they get ideas, they come back. But it's then very difficult for them to begin to implement change or influence change, because they might just be one or two people, often within a huge organisation. So in terms of how we begin to, Annie, affect some of this change in a range of settings, I think we've got to think about this at an organisational level as well, and looking for organisations to take forward and really own some of this change. Couple of questions. I'm kind of linking two questions here together. Mary Dawson. Mary, thank you for your comment. And you comment on the current COVID-19 situation, lockdown, and about some of the challenges that faces is placing for young people that we already knew were in difficult and vulnerable situations, and have been potentially trapped within that for quite a lengthy period of time now, and that might continue to be the case. I think all around the world, we're seeing increasing evidence of kind of quite a hike and an increase in instances of domestic abuse, and that's only the cases that we know about, obviously. And I think it really is worth recognising that, as we experience lockdown, some people will be very fortunate and lucky that they're despite the limitations that are placed on us by lockdown, their home space, their family environment, or their living space, and if it's family or friends around about them, it might be a safe, supportive place. There are millions of people where that's actually far from the case, and again, particularly thinking about kind of a lot of the children and young people, but in terms of this notion of caring for vulnerable children, for children who are already vulnerable pre-COVID-19, lockdown and the lack of access to some of the resources and supports that would be important to them will make it an even more challenging situation. And if we link this into Billy's story for a second, thinking about the material in week 4, and Billy beginning to engage more and more with the kind of advocacy group and that providing him support. If Billy were a real story and we were at COVID-19, then one of the main sources of support for him is gone. And then I think about, well, what's the other main source of support for him? Well, it's his Mr. Merton at school, but we've got to presume that, well, Billy wouldn't be at school, he wouldn't have access to that, presumably, as well. School might be able to do some sort of kind of even phone contact or something. His advocacy worker maybe will do that, but it's not going to be the same as the supports that are there. So Mary, I think you're absolutely correct to say that the challenges that the current situation is facing is just now, there will be a number of kind of social workers, child protection workers, kind of women's aid workers, etc., up and down our country, around the world, really concerned about a number of people that they knew about and were working with beforehand, and thinking about the situation that they're in just now, and then also thinking about how many new people have been placed in vulnerable situations because of the current situation. So how we come out of this and respond to that at the other side is going to be quite a challenge for us. Catherine Nicholson, Catherine, I'd just like to acknowledge your question. You asked a question about the children's hearing. I'm going to save that and come back to that in 2 weeks' time, because without giving too much away in terms of kind of spoilers about where Billy's story might go in week 5, the children's hearing system as it exists in Scotland kind of features kind of quite heavily in Billy's story moving forward. So I'm going to hold on to your question. Thanks for posting it, and I'll come back to that in 2 weeks' time. Another, just picking up on the bit about kind of where COVID-19 has placed us, Moeen Ramzan. So Moeen, thanks for your question. And you said, we're hearing a significant increased number of, you say, child abuse cases during COVID-19. Why do you think that is? Again, it's connected to what I was saying previously, the situation that many people find themselves in now, and the fact that for many children and young people, home is not necessarily as safe or as supportive or as nurturing as we like to be. And thinking back to week 2 and some of the material about kind of notions of attachment and containment and such like, that for young people that are potentially just now trapped in scary, challenging situations, then lockdown has only multiplied some of those concerns. And I think there's real challenges for services in terms of kind of how we try and respond to those children and young people now when we've not got easy access to them, and then whenever lockdown does begin to ease, in terms of thinking about how do we help to pick up some of the pieces thereafter, because there are going to be a lot of people in a worse off situation than before lockdown started. Sonia, kind of, I will come back to Sonia in a second. I just want to link in Natasha MacArthur. Natasha, thanks for your comment. You also said, I'm interested in how the current climate, the lockdown, will have an impact on all the vulnerable children. I think everything I just said a couple of seconds ago, I think making it potentially far more difficult and challenging for a number of kind of children and young people. And I've not even touched on issues such as access to food. Certainly in the UK, we know there's a number, and linking this to kind of some of the material that we asked you to think about in week 1 about poverty and resources and such like, we know there are a number of kind of families up and down, millions of families up and down the country, where children being at school, having access to free school meals is a really important part of their daily routine in terms of kind of growth, health, nourishment, etc. And not all children are still getting it. In some places, but we're seeing food be able to be delivered in terms of replacing those school meals, but that's not the case all the time. So this is another aspect to this in terms of how many children and families will be suffering. So Natasha, there's huge amounts of challenges here. And likewise, Ashley Mack, you make a similar comment. You said you're interested and fearful of the impact of the current COVID-19 climate on how societies think about caring for vulnerable children and families. I guess the flip side of this, it would be important to acknowledge that all the challenges that are going on, there's any amount of really heartening and good stories about individual, neighbourly, community level, amount of volunteers stepping up in a whole variety of situations. So I'm not kind of suggesting rose-tinted glasses here and saying, oh, that's fine, all these individual efforts can make up for any gaps in government responses or anything such as that. But I think it is important that alongside some of these worries, to acknowledge that there's been a number of really heartening responses, often at a very individual, community-orientated level, and there's a lot of people looking out for their neighbours and their families and trying to support it. So I would want us to kind of hold on to that. But actually, yeah, I think that kind of in terms of how we work our way out of this situation, that there's lots for us to think about as a society. Sonia M, I'll come back to you now. So I'd mentioned it, and you'd said that it was great to hear from Jenny Malloy, and again, somebody talking about a positive experience of the care system. And it's interesting because, yeah, I think largely Jenny's story is a positive one, but is it 100% positive? No, there are lots of challenging parts of kind of Jenny's story and different things that happened at different times. And you asked the question about the kind of what stories do we hear? I guess I mentioned some of that stuff before about the kind of often more negative or sensationalist reporting of negative stories kind of drives the media in some instances. And I think it's something that certainly working in a university setting and being involved in a lot of work with the residential childcare sector in Scotland, kind of something we'll often be talking with organisations and kind of people working within those organisations is if we wait for the world to start telling a positive story about our sector and the services that we offer, we'll probably wait forever and a day. And actually, it's up to us to try and influence and change the narrative and change the agenda. And that doesn't mean that we still need to acknowledge challenges and problems and faults within the system, but it's not to allow the narrative about the system to become completely dominated by that, and for us to be having and promoting conversations about good practice, about the success stories, about citing examples such as Jenny and Who Cares Scotland, an advocacy group in Scotland. There are a number of kind of care experienced young people and their care experienced adults who I think act as very positive kind of examples of kind of young people who have, despite a range of adverse experiences, have stories to tell which are far more balanced than some of the negative sensationalist reporting that we can see in the media. But these stories need to become more common and need to be more visible. Aware time, we'll get kind of 5 minutes or so left. I've a kind of couple other comments that I pulled out. Nick Alcock, Nick, thanks very much for your comment. You commented, you said the concept of love being discussed. You said about Jenny speaking about carers becoming emotionally available. How do these aspects of this week's discussion fit into current thinking, particularly as we are in this risk-averse society? Again, just picking up on some of the themes I've had earlier, I think that's a challenge for us, and we've just got to keep banging that drum, Nick. And I think using processes, certainly in the Scottish context, using the independent care review, for instance, and who knows, it perhaps might be kind of wishful thinking in some way, but perhaps some of the way in which we can come out of lockdown and the COVID-19 situation and kind of perhaps grasping on to some of the community-based support initiatives that have sprung up in the light of lockdown, and can actually say these are some of the things that have got to drive society and care systems and schools kind of moving forward. And it's certainly, social distancing, it looks like it's going to be with us for quite until at least there's a vaccine. At least it's hard to imagine schools operating, just going back to normal in even a couple of months' time. So we're going to have to think differently about how society, big organisations within society operate, and about the what we want from these settings, and because it strikes me we're going to have a large task to make sure that we allow young people to to feel safe and hopeful and such like that. I've not really mentioned mental health. That's because it's a big feature of Billy's story, especially in week 4, towards the end of the material, where you get a sense of some of the increasing challenges that Karen is facing within Billy's story. And again, we could have spoke for an hour about the relationship between COVID-19, lockdown, mental health, and the stress and strain that this situation is placing on many people. So that's another important thing. But we'll kind of make a point of talking about that a bit more in the final live stream at the end of week 6. So thanks for that comment, Nick. I also had a comment from Gail Bradshaw. Gail, thanks for your comment. And again, just going back to the notion of kind of risk and risk assessment, you say, no, it's important for children to take calculated risks, learn from mistakes, build resilience. But you're saying, and you say you refer to my school, something you maybe kind of work there. You say some of the policy at your school can make supporting that very tricky. The school's parents also have wide-ranging views of risk. How can we keep everyone happy? What a great question. And it probably kind of serves the point I said earlier about a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, a lot of the stuff that we're thinking about the course. There's a range of views. It's a kind of one set of parents, or one parent's notion of what is appropriate risk for a child to be taken is another parent's kind of absolute nightmare in terms of there's no way my child should be getting exposed to that risk. And then schools and local authorities and different agencies are left trying to navigate a position within there. Again, I would say I think we need to enable as much appropriate risk taking. Okay, and I think the use of the word appropriate, and I really want to stress, it's not just a free-for-all here. It's not just like kids do what they want and learn from mistakes, and that use that to justify anything and everything. Actually, kind of far from it. It's got to be about appropriate risk-taking with boundaries round about it, with kind of adult support. And I used the phrase earlier on about kind of adults, where appropriate, being present to help young people either celebrate their successes or learn from some of the missteps and challenges of the experience, and then kind of help them move forward and learn from that. And then one final comment. Well, Christine Elson. Christine, thank you for your comment. You kind of get 2 questions in here. And I'm just really trying to pick out the first one. Given the number of children and families that need support, how would it be possible to have enough CYC practitioners to have the necessary meaningful relationship? And that's a really interesting question in the context, certainly in the UK, and this whole discussion about us, what lockdown and COVID-19 has presented to us in terms of who are the real key workers that make society function, who have we not been able to function without as a society, and who have we managed to kind of say, well, it's okay for certain people to be stuck in their house, but we've got these key professions. And I think it's really showing a light on kind of what we regard as important kind of key work in terms of the health and well-being of society to allow society to function, but especially us supporting the most vulnerable within society, and especially within that, vulnerable children. So I think not only have we shone a light on what is truly important, I would agree with you. I think we need to then kind of take that discussion a bit further and say, not only do we need to value these professions more, there needs to be more emphasis placed on the kind of how many we need of them, the working conditions we provide to them, the remuneration and the value that is placed on these roles, because actually it has been very interesting that a lot of the roles that have become deemed key worker roles in order for society to have to function and ensure that the vulnerable stay cared for and protected are often some of the less valued in terms of kind of how society views them, or perhaps even organisations view them in terms of pay and conditions and such like. And normally at the start, I kind of aim to kind of make these things last for about an hour. So I see that's me. I've got a minute to go, so I'll think about kind of winding things up there. I think I've managed to everybody that had posted a response and where the question has been posted saying I would try and respond to your question. I think I've kind of touched on everybody. I apologise if I highlighted anybody's question. I've not actually managed to talk to it in the hour. As I say, I've got more questions than that I can hope to respond to in our session that we have here. I like to say I absolutely appreciate that hopefully you found some of this interesting. You might have been sitting nodding your head to some of it, but equally you might have been sitting thinking, I'm not sure I agree with Graham 100% in relation to everything or anything that you said. So I really encourage people to kind of keep the kind of conversation going. And for me, it's actually having the conversation is the most important part about us absolutely shining a light on the needs of vulnerable children and this group of young people. And arguably the current situation is a larger group of young people than it was kind of 6 weeks ago, because I think current situation will have placed more children into vulnerable and risky situations. And there's a bit about how we're responding to that in the short term, post-lockdown, but living with COVID-19 and what the world looks like without a vaccine, and then longer term in terms of the kind of the sort of society that we want to be, the sort of world that we want to be part of, the sort of societies that we want to create, and then how we create the systems and structures to support all children and young people, and thinking, using Billy and Karen as an example in terms of how we can best support them. So we've got 2 more weeks to go. We've got week 5 and week 6. I've given you a bit of a trailer as to what week 5 Billy's story will involve in terms of the children's hearing. And if you don't already, if you're not already very familiar with the children's hearing system, you'll become a bit more familiar with that, and we'll talk about that in the live stream a bit more. And then there's other materials in week 5 and week 6. So I would really encourage you just to keep the conversations going. And going back to the numbers that I cited at the beginning, I'm probably more pleased with the sociability rating, that the amount of you that are commenting and being part of a vibrant learning community. So please keep that going, keep the conversations going for the next 2 weeks, and keep the chat going on this page underneath the live stream. If there's anything that I've said that you want to respond to, then kind of please keep going and keep conversations going. I'll see you for the final live stream event, hopefully in 2 weeks' time. And between now and then, I hope you stay healthy and safe and look after yourself and your families. Thank you.